the Gukesh's game against Magnus, where Magnus came for revenge but got a very cruel defeat from Gukesh, and it's right away start the game. So Magnus starts with c4. Gukesh responds e5. The typical stuff, knight c3. Magnus goes for a different choice. Gukesh goes for a different choice. Bishop b4, and Magnus allows for Gukesh to capture and make the double pawns. But nonetheless, Magnus is looking for activity of this bishop. Also, he has exchanged bishop, so he has double bishop there now. Now Gukesh playing solid. d6. Again, Magnus plays e4, controlling the center, but I feel the bishop is locked. This bishop is open though. Gukesh responds very solidly with knight d7. Magnus plays bishop d3. Typical response, knight c5. Magnus goes back. Gukesh develops another knight. Magnus plays queen e2. Then Gukesh, to solidify the knight and avoid the move b4, Gukesh plays the move a5. Right now, Magnus comes up with a very nice idea of knight d2, so that he's doing two things. He's solidifying the center, or he is also trying to catch this spot to get rid of this knight. Okay, Gukesh responds with g6, and if you see, the evaluation slightly shifted towards Magnus just now, because he has weakened these dark squares, and also Magnus. Now let's see how the Magnus responds. Magnus responds with knight f1 with the idea of knight e3 or knight g3. Both are very good moves and centralizing the knight, to which Gukesh responds with bishop e6, basically targeting this double weakened pawn. Magnus plays bishop g5, attacking the weak squares. But as Gukesh knows, in future there might be future attacks like queen f3 and so on. So Gukesh right away plays h6. Magnus's bishop falls back. Gukesh plays g5. Magnus' bishop falls back again, and Gukesh finally opens up his queen d7. Then there is f3. Gukesh's knight attacks bishop and also looking for this outpost. Magnus develops his knight. Gukesh captures the outpost. Magnus doesn't capture the knight but instead moves the queen. Gukesh, being aggressive, opens up this pawn. Magnus puts his knight in the center with this threat. So Gukesh, the computer shows this move, but this I don't feel it's possible humanly given rapid time frame. So Gukesh just captures the knight, Magnus captures back, and Gukesh falls back. You see, the evaluation till now was around equalish. The engine shows 0.3 at this point, but this engine gives us as blunder. Instead, what engine was suggesting is to have queen e2 to connect the rooks. Knight goes back, bishop comes back, attacking the knight and developing the bishop. Now Gukesh moves the king with the idea of king g7, connecting the rooks and centralizing in the future. Magnus plays g3 to avoid the knight f4. As we said, Gukesh gets the king out of the way and gets the rooks supporting each other. Magnus centralizing the bishop. Gukesh covering some dark spots. Knight goes back. And very aggressive move, b4 from Magnus. Captures. And this is where Magnus gives some counterplay to Gukesh. And even if you see, Gukesh has managed to bring the position back to equal. Now, see this attack. If you try to support, there are multiple attacks building and Magnus gets good development. Instead, Gukesh comes up with a sacrificial but very dynamic idea of playing c6. He plays c6 Magnus captures, and then he suddenly shoots down the center with d5. Magnus has no option than to capture, otherwise there is d4 be which will block the Magnus's bishops very badly. So he captures. Knights comes in the center. There are two attacks. Magnus tries to protect the pawn with a3. Then this is the best idea that computer shows, and Gukesh finds the move. Magnus tries to protect the pawn, as this is the only thing that can help Magnus win this game right now. Gukesh attacks the pawn, Magnus captures the pawn, and Gukesh places the knight with the queen attack and the bishop attack. So two of white's pieces are attacked, and Magnus finds the only move, bishop c5. Now if you see, this is attacked but this is pinned, so Gukesh captures two pieces for his rook, and here Magnus gets the king out of the way to connect the rooks and centralize the rooks. Now you see this structure, there are three pawns here and there are two knights defending. So basically Gukesh has two knights for a rook and two pawns, and these three pawns have been covered very well with the knights, and let's see how the game goes. Gukesh gets the knight back with the idea of putting the knight on c4, very well supported. Magnus gets the queen out of harm's way first. Gukesh responds with e6. Magnus plays the move c5, but Gukesh finds the strongest and best move by the engine here, being e4, and Magnus escapes by giving check. Gukesh gets out of the way. Magnus cannot capture this pawn because there is knight check and then you lose the rook. So Magnus plays rook d1, then captures. Now there are too many threats. There is queen e2 and then queen g2 checkmate. So Magnus tries to cover it with rook e5, but seems this is blunder because of the move queen h3. Now let's focus here. What is happening? If you play something else, there is queen g2, king goes back, then there are all sorts of attacks. There are knights jumping in, there is pawn f2, there can be queen h1 check and so on. So Magnus decides to take the pawn, but it comes at the cost of Gukesh putting his knight on c4, attacking the rook, attacking the pawn. This pawn is double attacked, and now all pieces are gathering to hunt Magnus's king. Now Magnus finds the move to stop the attack, but Gukesh captures the knight. Gukesh captures the rook with his knight, and now the position is very well favorable for Gukesh, and Gukesh gives the check. Magnus goes back, Gukesh kills one more check, Magnus goes back, and Gukesh puts the knight on f5. Now if you see, the only hope Magnus has is this pawn. If Gukesh gets rid of this pawn, then Magnus is doomed to resign. Now Magnus tries to go ahead with some plans to promote, to push the pawn, but Gukesh plays the best move, made threat here, as well as attacking the rook. Magnus finds the only move. Gukesh checks, Magnus moves ahead. Gukesh gives this one more check. Now if you capture this, your rook is going. So Magnus moves the king, and Gukesh finds the excellent move knight e5, attacking the queen and the pawn, and now the pawn will be captured. So Magnus plays queen e2 with the hope of giving rook d8 check in future and maybe finding some repeating checks, but Gukesh captures the pawn with the knight and everything is covered. Magnus comes back to e4, but now it's all over because Gukesh captures the a5 pawn and there are all sorts of attack on e5, and Magnus just resigns at this point. So a very good game by Gukesh. I think at some point he was doing bad. I wouldn't say he was in a losing position, but Magnus had some very good advantage, but Magnus played little risky and Gukesh capitalized very well. And Magnus couldn't take his revenge. So kudos to Gukesh and thank you for watching.